Welcome to EVE Online and Major Freak. So I think it would be important to, since more and more people are watching my videos, to make a really good FAQ about pirate strongholds to prevent unnecessary loss of income. The most important thing to realize is that the more DPS you have on field shooting the the FOB itself, the pirate stronghold, the more dangerous it will be for you. So thinking to overwhelm the FOB with numbers is going to backfire. The enemy spawns both in accordance with what hulls you field and throw at it. Not that you keep it the safe spot, it ignores that, but what you throw at it. So the more people you have on grid, the more ISK you make, kind of. It's not really a zero-sum thing. The more players you have on field, the more total ISK you get combined, although it does shrink. The optimal size is 10 pilots on 10 ships on grid. It has to be not a pod, not a corvette, and not anything cloaked on grid, and of course in fleet. And if you have people at the safe spot, when you warp them to the forward operating base, if you warp back to the safe spot, make sure you don't get aggroed on by any of the rats, the diamond rats that spawn. If so, those diamond rats will warp to your safe spot. So be careful about that one point. So the idea, as you're getting the idea, go in with the minimum possible to both do it quickly and safely. If you try to do it too quickly with too many people, you're going to pay for it. And if you don't do it safely, as in make sure you follow a couple of guidelines. Those couple of guidelines are we're doing this against the Blood Raider. I've never actually done the Garistas. So we warp in from our safe spot with our guys. You can stagger it if you want. If you stagger the inbounds until you see something spawning and then you warp in your next person, you will stagger launches and potentially make a situation where one part of the defense force is not helping the other, especially when it comes to Logi. That is a smart thing to do. Once you get up to my speed, you could ignore all that. The other safe practice when you're first doing these is to drain the FOB using a pod. Pods will not spawn anything. They will not get the rewards, but I've already mentioned that. But do be careful that when you warp in your DPS, you need to warp off your pod and get into your ship and come back to the safe spot, because diamond rats will shoot and destroy your pod. So do be careful of that. All right. Now then, your ships must be able to withstand heavy neutralizing. Having multiple capacitor batteries lowers the overall. It doesn't matter what size they are, the multiples you have of them, they're the same, gives you the same reduction in capacitor drain to the enemy. The more cap you have total will give you breathing space. The more batteries you have will lower the cap drainage from the enemy. Your main drain enemies are Ashimus. The FOB itself, it has two neutralizers. They hit hard. The FOB itself will randomly select anybody. Doesn't matter how much you cheese the targeting priorities of the rats. The FOB, totally random. The Ashimus will focus fire on one thing and keep firing at that one thing. So pay attention to that one for cap drain. It is deadly, especially when you get 3 Ashimus. It's not unheard of, it's uncommon. And the last, most rare and most dangerous for your team, period, by far, are when the hauler shows up and spawns a very rare double Balgorn close-in air support cast freaking monster team, and they will drain your cap like there's no tomorrow. You must primary those. So yeah, that's the idea behind that. You need cap to do remote repping. Remote repping is the only way to keep your guys alive outside of trying to cheese it with, say, a solo rattlesnake fit and hope nobody else shows up and spawns more stuff or you're dead. But remote repping is the best way to do it. Plus, remote repping each other forces the rats to mostly shoot your remote repping people. Mostly. There are situations where if you have one more diamond crew, diamond crew, they will, if they have one more crew than you have remote repping ships, that extra crew will target something else. And you have to be careful because those little things, they hit like a truck. So do be careful. So that's the basic, the minimum possible to lower the spawn of the response fleet. The defense fleet. Defense fleet is what spawns when you warp within 365 kilometers of the FOB itself, and they'll spawn. It's random. The first spawn is pretty big. It's between 8 and 12 ships, sometimes less, depending. Completely random. Sometimes you can get battleships. 2 battleships are worth... I'll get to that in a minute. So 2 battleships, an auger, and they'll be at 100 kilometers. And then you have maybe a couple, maybe 4 crewers that are close-in pointers. And the augers don't help the crewers, so it's the easiest spawn ever. It's a joke for DPS. But if you get the cruisers, the bulk of it will be omens, and you'll probably get 6 omens, 2 crewers, maybe 1 crew, maybe a couple of arbitrators, maybe a couple of ashimus, maybe a couple of augers, the logi. The point is, the core is made of omens, cruisers of that spawn, and any support ships lowers the amount of omens. So if you get all of the selection I just told you, then the less omens you get. So it's kind of scary when you see all omens. If you don't see any crewers, you can easily warp off if you're in trouble. It happens, it's uncommon. All cruisers are great. You can blow up the FOB and then leave if you're tanking well. But the omens hit like a truck. 6 omens that I mentioned are worth... Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. 6 omens give the damage output of 4 battleships. So, as I mentioned, you'll probably get 2 battleships or 6 omens. And of course, the DPS is half for the battleships. It's counterintuitive, but that's the way it works. So if you see battleships, woohoo. Typically what happens, battleships will spawn, they take a while to spawn. Whereas if you warp in and it decides for cruisers, it'll pop them out right away from the structure. The battleship spawn will tend to warp in from somewhere and take its sweet time. So if you're like, don't get it instant spawn, it's like, okay, these are going to be probably battleships. But lag, whatever. Okay. So the goal is to go in with the minimum amount possible and get some good DPS in the structure in order to kill it. Now you have to, of course, have a minimum DPS. You'd be lucky if your rattlesnake has enough DPS to do the job. I believe it does. It takes about an hour for a solo rattlesnake to do it. 15 minutes for 3 Leshaks. I use 3 Leshaks. Here's my rule of thumb. I will field as many hulls of that type as I can fit remote repping. When I was doing it when I first started, I had Geddons, and I was able to put 6 remote repping devices on the Geddon, and that allowed me to have 3 teammates. So I was able to logi chain for a quad of Geddons. With Leshaks, I go with 3 because it's easier that way. I can put 1 of each on my 2 wingmen, and that's perfect. I don't need to think. I just need to set up my chain and boom, done. It's always organize your stuff alphabetically, because if you don't, it's going to be annoying. This is Hereticus, Major Freak, Minor Freak, Rentennial, and Seneschal. And I do it clockwise, and it's mostly alphabetical. The Hauler's up here because Hauler reasons. Hauler Trader. And so I've got my main combat guys. They get set up with a watch list. And always before you enter combat, do try to have your drones in folders with one that you're going to use. Obviously the heavy for this one as your favorite. So you can just hit the hotkey to launch those. So you don't have to think. All you have to do is land. You got your watch list all set up. And you've got it ordered for up and down. So Hereticus would be down, because last person on the list goes to the first top of the list, right? And then Hereticus would have Minor Freak is down, and sorry, Minor Freak is up. Sorry, top of the list goes to the bottom when it goes up, and Major Freak as down. So there you go. That's that. And of course, Major Freak is the easiest, and that's why it's, if you have somebody in the middle of the alphabet, it's so much easier to do logi, because you know who your up and down is without even having to put any thought into it. So up is Hereticus, down is Minor Freak. And so I used to have these like that, and I go, okay, 1 and 2, but then I realized, wait, it's so much easier if I just go 3 and 4 and then switch my other one and go 5 and 6. And I'll show you how that works once we land. So we've got our watch list. That's great. We've got our folders. That's great. Close anything not needed. So I've got my overview. Got this. I'm just going to keep this open. It's easier to, yeah. Just close what you can to feel comfortable. And the ordering of the fleet, it's kind of important. What I have is a wing commander who does not have fleet formation. It's just, you can use an alpha for warping point to get, if you want to warp people to a gate, right? It's handy. And have your squad commander as the one, or your wing, depending if, you can have this guy in fleet and Seneschal in the wing. Everybody in the wing is the ones warping to the FOB, and you want them spaced out. And I use arrow because it's fun. But if you do it that way, and if you warp these guys to your guy waiting at the FOB, usually I'll warp my fleet commander, FC2, the guy who just made the bookmark using a pod, by warping in, and I'll show you actually how it's done right now. I'll give you an example. Okay, so you say we go to the station, we dock, leave our ship, undock, and then open up the pirate stronghold thing, and then we warp to that location. As we're warping, we'll open up Control B, and we'll hit our enter and click the button as we sense we're passing 10k kilometers 2. So go warp, and I'll open that up, and I'll go FOB 1, And I'll just wait till this gets to about less than 1 million. Then I get ready for it. And I wait till it'll kind of half it to 20 and 10 and now. And don't wait for it to look like it's below 10K. Guess when it's passing 10K, and that's when you hit it. And that way you won't have a lot of difficulty. And 8,000. So between, I like to be between under 8,000 and over 1,500. 1,500 is the aggro range of the rats. If you're within aggro range of the defense fleet, they will, I'll show you, they will starburst to you. They'll starburst 400 kilometers from you and then warp right on your ass. And it's scary as heck. So, yeah, don't screw up. Yeah, that's how it's done. And once you're there, you get one of your guys. I use Jägermeister. It's in my destroyer. I just picked it arbitrarily as the one that gets there and does the thing. My brain doesn't work. There we go. And you have to be within 6,500 to board it. And anyways, you sit there at that spot you've gotten, and then your fleet commander, the Omnon Gunner, Omnon Gunner warps to your pod in his ship, and then you can take that, I take Jägermeister back to dock, get aboard the ship, and as I'm doing that, I can get Seneschal to warp everybody as, warp squad arrow to the fleet commander. And then we all land in arrow formation, so we're not bumping, that the guys can align to the FOB without bumping into other ships. That's how I like to do it. So, okay, well, we're set. Let's go in. So the thing, we get all this set up beforehand, is that we can easily just hit the hotkey for launch drones, click that, click. Launch drones, click that, click the object. And of course you can see me, before I go in, I face the FOB, so it's easy, bam, done. And now, the most important part, of course, is to start locking up. And the reason I do up and down is because sometimes you need to apply reps to somebody else. And the last thing you want to do is not have at least one rep on an energy on your wingman, right? So 3, 4, and I'll do approach 2. What I'll do is I'll keep at range automatic as 300. And see, I did 5 and 6. Now I go here and click the down, and I do 5 and 6, click keypad, and then I click this one and go 3, 4, and I click my next one, I go, this is for multi-boxers, 3, 4, and then I go 5, 6, and bam, done. So everything's set, and we have 2 Ashimus, all cruisers, so great. I can ignore them, I can even kill them if I wanted, but it's not worth it. It's worth more to kill the structure and move on. Because even though these might be worth 500,000 each, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so say 10. So that's 500 million, but it's divided for all your guys on grid, right? So that's not really worth it. That's what, 50 million each? Well, let's see. Do the math if is it worth it? I suck at math. Like here I'm telling you not to, but so here's the math. So we got 500 each times, let's say 12, all right? 6 million. And then, oh yeah, okay. And then we divide it by all our people. And so that's, I'm getting just under 1 million each pilot for killing it. And that's, we get like 28 to 30 million each, tops 30 million at 10 people. I was playing with, I think, 19 people on grid yesterday, and we were getting 22 million each, because it kind of drops off slowly. You're still getting, you know, you're still going up in value for total ISK made. So see how easy that was? I'm within range, and important to keep at range is because when you bring in a support ship, the inclination is to orbit. It's not going to matter. You're going to die like flies if you get targeted, but the inclination is to orbit. I just want to orbit. It's just a superstition of, oh, it's going to lower DPS by, you know, getting transversal, blah, blah, blah. The most important thing is to have everybody plated, so you have enough time to rep them. So resist and plate, and then the remote reps can keep you alive if, in the rare circumstances, they switch targets. And they will. They do. It's rare, but it'll happen. So here we go. So this is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So definitely something spawned for probably the third guy you pull in. I usually figure if you warp in one and then you warp in another, it won't spawn. But if you warp in an odd numbered, it'll spawn things. So I probably got like 2 extra cruisers. So we got the maximum of 12, and you know, they were all omens, boo. And then we got probably a couple more, maybe. Sometimes it can be up to 16. It's really weird. But anyways, it's so random that you'll never actually tie down the actual numbers. Somebody did a while ago, and my apologies, but I know which video he... let's look it up. It was... Pirate Strongholds playlist. Let's bring it up here. And as you can tell, my guys are completely ignored, because they never once got aggroed on and never once warped in. So as you can see, the incoming is pretty hefty, and it's all EM and thermal. And I've got, it's more actually thermal than, EM than thermal. So I've got 3 EM resist, 2 thermal, damage control, and reactive. And I've got it past, like, this is really low, actually, because I'm using cheap stuff right now. But I've got better, resist. Let's bring this up. 95 and 91. And the important thing is to realize that once you're past 90 resists, that every percentage counts after that. Oh, they're really focusing on this guy. This is why you have plates, because eventually, like, that is a lot of DPS. Like, Ashimu's output as much as Omens. And the Ashimus, as you'll see, always focus fire on one person and never switch, but the Omens eventually will switch. And that's why you have the plate. I've got 1 plate. And to me, the resists are more important, but 1 plate helps, because eventually, knock on wood, the Omens will switch targets. And sometimes they switch targets a lot, which is kind of freaky, but yeah. I was looking at the amount of rats that spawn. I haven't looked at it for a long time. Give me a second here. We'll pay attention to the targeting. Dissecting a pirate stronghold long version. God, when did I make this? 2 years ago. Cray. Alright, now somebody... Didn't somebody... I swear somebody messaged me. Maybe it was like in-game or something. Dissecting a pirate stronghold short version? Meh. TNT Lord. Was it TNT Lord or somebody else? No. Okay. Jeez. This is annoying. The guy probably messaged me in-game. How do I search for that? Anyway, sorry. Someone commenter had information. It's about, he said it was like between 12 and 16 or something, an initial spawn, blah, blah, blah. And he had the numbers down. It was amazing. But I'm sorry, I can't find the comments. So my apologies. But yeah, it is truly RNG. It's amazing. And the thing is about the defense fleet, it'll spawn more. Now they switch targets. They will spawn more for different hull types. It's not the amount of guns you have or DPS you've got. Kind of. The hull would be the determining factor of what spawns. So it doesn't matter what stuff you put on your ship, it's the hull. And like the command battlecruisers like EOS, the Nesters, they spawn outsized rats than you would get, say, using the Trigs, which have, I think they kind of screwed up and they decided, oh, it's, well, base DB ups to the ship, so it's going to be, and Logi spawn a bit more. It's going to be the base DPS that they start with, which doesn't make sense because it should be, it should be the maximum that you could possibly do on a ship with the reasonable outfit, right? But you can cheese it by using trig ships. All right, so yeah, that's basically the most important thing you need to know, or things you need to know. When things go pear-shaped, and they eventually will, and you say somebody forgot to do their hardeners, you'll notice it. You will melt. These people, the rats do. It's like you will learn your lessons the hard way. You will lose ships, but you've got to remember to turn on your hardeners. You've got to remember to have people on your watch list. You've got to remember to have your drones. Don't leave them behind, by the way, when you leave. Sometimes you don't have a choice. And in such an event where you have to flee, these drones will not get back to you in time. So just leave them on the field. What you need to do when you need to flee is don't warp to your safe spot. Because remember, when you have aggro, they'll warp to you. And if you were watching, you saw them starburst, they'll go out to like 400 and warp back. So sorry about not pointing that out completely. Yeah, just pick, usually it's a Stargate, go, okay, we are going to align to that spot, and you align everybody, and once you see them all aligned, then you order MJD, and you all hit MJD at the same time, and you bounce to that point. But you have to remember that, oh, right, I don't have any crewers on field, that the crewers point and web will last even if you jump to 100 kilometers. So you jump down 100 kilometers, the cycle time of that web and point will still be active. And you have to watch that icon till it disappears before you can warp. And also remember that when you land, if you're being webbed, you have to pick up speed, right? So you have to be careful. If you're multi-boxing and you don't watch carefully, you could go warp, 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 think everybody's warped and not check on them, and that disruptor is still active and preventing them from warping. It's always a good idea to pre-recall your heavy drones as it gets about 10%, because that's going to pop and they're still returning. And it's always good to pre-align your hauler, which I didn't, I screwed up, so you can warp in instantly. there are some people try to steal your stuff sometimes. So always good to warp in immediately and grab it just after so it doesn't spawn. Because if you warp in just prior, it'll spawn something, right? Probably like a cruiser, probably 2 curs. Grab that. Bloop. There you go. And you're off to the next one. I have that already set up. Sometimes there's 2. And interestingly enough, we didn't get any issues with the 2 FOBs. Sometimes interesting stuff can happen, and I'm glad it didn't, because that's an extra layer of complexity you didn't need when I'm giving an introduction of this kind of thing. So I warp off that character. Already got the reward, so cool. And I will warp my fleet commander. So that one will warp off. I will add everybody to... I'll add everybody to watch list so you can see who's on field still. Okay. So I've sent off Jägermeister, Omnant Gunner, the fleet commander was sent off there, and now I can go warp arrow, and I don't have anything on field that can point me, so I don't have to worry about it. I'll actually show you what I do if indeed something like that happens. So I'll align, put it in practice. It's because it's really important to get this down completely and flawlessly. So you see everybody aligning, make sure everybody's aligned. Your drones are all in. Oh, by the way, salvage is crap. You won't get anything from salvage. It's pointless. You could maybe a million if you salvage the entire field. If you're lucky to kill all of them, yeah, it's not worth it. All right. Oh yeah, and do remember to reload all as often as possible. Whoops. It's a very good habit to get into. Just a small point. All right, so I'll get these guys off field first. So F8, F8, F8. As you can see, I put it in the F8 column. And it'll spool up. And you'll see the web still active for a little tiny bit. All right. And I'll just warp them off. I don't need to. I could warp fleet, but I want to show you what happens, especially if, say, there was cruisers on the field. And they're in warp. Now I can go, okay, warp squad, bam, go that way. So everybody's warping away. I've got my loot. That's a great thing about the DST. It's got built-in warp core stabilizers, which is great. Pretty much ignore the rats, the curs, only long point. They don't scram. So obviously that's why the MJD is so helpful. Yeah. All right. So and I'll land in a gaggle, but whatever. Yay for having more than one fob in a system. All right, off we go. Da-da-da. Yeah, as long as you're less than 8,000 kilometers, you can actually view the battlefield if you're an observer. Yeah, and as long as everybody got the reward, yeah, it's quite lucrative. No complaints there, that's for sure. Yep, align. sure I'm not going to bump into anybody. And yeah, just warp in again. And that's how it's done. I'll open up the kill mail for you. Sometimes you'll get a blueprint. It's a lockbox. It's a freighter size lockbox. You have to get the lockbox in the freighter, and then you can open it in the freighter's cargo. But it's just a faction blueprint. If you're going to build it, take it to Jita, build it there, so you don't have to haul everything there. You'll need a heavy neutralizer, which you get tons of if you're blowing up FOBs. But take the neutralizer 8,000 meters and the blueprint to Jita, build it there with the components you can get there and in MR. Sometimes it's cheaper in domain space, but whatever. Build it there. You can get a decent profit off it, selling it to buyer's market or doing the 0-1 game. Here we go. And this, we know it's battleship. So 4 crewers, 1 auger, and maybe 2-ish battleships. There you go. And if you see a Balgorn, it won't nuke you. They'll warp with their APOC wingmen and shoot you from 100 kilometers and you're safe. So, and with your hardeners on and a plate and stuff like that on a battleship, you can withstand the firepower for a little bit. So that's why I'm a bit lazy here. And sometimes it'll sensor damp you, and the sensor damp will cut off midway before between locking, and you might get a weird up-down switch. That's not what you expect. Just be careful of that. Just be aware. It can happen. I mean, it's better to know that it can happen and be prepared for it than not know what the hell is going on when you discover that your up-down is not working the way you intended. Keeping at range. Yeah, we can kill these super easy using, I like to use, I'll recall the drones actually. Show you what I do in this case. I can bring in my Thrasher and kill them, but whatever, I'll show you what happens when I just use drones. Easy enough. And the drones really don't add a lot of DPS in the end of it when you spool up completely, right? So I launch my, I find Vespas are the best against the crewers. And they're great against drones too. If you ever want to kill drones or Vespas that go really fast, it is kinetic. Yeah, it's, I guess they've got the best tracking and blah, blah, blah and everything. Optimal range or whatever. They just seem to work just so well. And what I do is I've got hotkeys for all this stuff. I've got delete as engage. I've got end as launch. I've got home for return to orbit. And I've got page up as return to drone bay. And I've got page down as reconnect to drones. So I don't use insert for anything, but those 5 keys up there are perfectly grouped. And it's awesome. Let's do it that way. Yeah, hotkeys are life. Hotkeys are absolute life, and it doesn't ruin the immersion for me. At first, I hated it because, you know, you can't see what I'm doing, and, you know, I'm just clicking on keys, so you don't know which keys. But honestly, it doesn't detract from the enjoyment of the game or using your computer. It's just, it's an element that you can just ignore and just be immersive with other factors of the game and be more efficient. It truly is a better way to play. And plus, if you organize the hotkeys ergonomically and the way I just said, it feels immersive, doesn't it? It's like, oh, I've got their own little group on the keyboard for it, so it doesn't feel janky. Whatever. There are certain things that you have to know about, advanced things that you need to know about the FOB. A hauler will spawn a response fleet, which is typically lots of frigates. Sometimes you'll get battleships, and sometimes you'll get cruisers. And what's really scary, of course, is having a cruiser spawn, and then the response fleet spawns cruisers. Warp off. Get the hell out of there. MGD away, warp to that Celestial, wait 15 minutes, and roll the dice again. And now, if it spawns battleships, the hauler, and there's 2 Balgorns, or at least 1 Balgorn, stop shooting the structure, switch whatever ammo you need to get range on those Balgorns, and primary those Balgorns. Wipe them off the field immediately. Get them off the field. Priority target. And then you can go back to killing the fob. Yeah, but the neutralizers on those Balgorns will eventually cause a cascade failure, and you die. So, do be careful. Yeah, it makes fobs, like, I could go AFK, but what if the hauler spawns Balgorns? Or what if the hauler spawns Omens? You know, if you have full, like, say if there was all cruisers, and I went AFK, what if the hauler spawned cruisers? Or what if the hauler spawned the Balgorns? And I go AFK for 10 minutes, because I know it's going to take 10 minutes. I could come back and my guys would be dead, including my pods. So every fob is different. Literally, it's never completely boring. And if it gets too boring, you might forget to turn on your hardeners, or, goof up somehow, or something. Have the wrong implant sets in. I noticed recently that talisman implants are really important for this. I used to think, oh, it was overkill, but no, they're really important. Do try to get them. They're not that expensive. Capacitor management, surgical strike, Lord, I don't think that helps for. I use it for other things like Balgorns. My Balgorn uses, yeah, I love my Balgorns. But yeah, this one's good. Yeah, don't need to go crazy. Just the alphas tend to be cheaper than the omegas, and it gets more expensive as you move down the list. These are 5%ers, are usually about 150 million each. They're expensive, so yeah. And don't cheap out on the resistances. If you can get, I'm going to Jita actually. That's kind of cheap lately. The core type EM hardeners and the thermal ones are actually like 11 million, which is like, what the? So yeah, definitely check out the prices, because it's worth pushing it past the 90%. Because remember, if you're getting 90%, they're doing 10%. And if you get 91, it's 9%. You see? And if you get 92, it's 8%. And if you get 93, it's 7%. See? And their DPS goes down from 10% to 7%. That's 30% just for like 3 percentage points. So super important to realize that, because it'll count, especially when you get freaking hammered by a double spawn of cruisers, or somebody thinks bringing in a Nestor is a smart idea. I've seen it done. You routinely see massive globs of ships just warp in and mob the fob. That's because they're insane autistic people. But it's also, by doing that, it pretty much scares away any competition wanting to steal somebody's fob. But of the people who steal fobs, they're the people who do it. I know, right? Yeah, it's like, yeah, you're talking more about yourself than us. And most people I meet are really polite about it. I'll warp in and, oh, you already got it. Okay, fair enough. And you warp away, or somebody else sees and warps, or just sits there and watches you. Typically, they're not a bunch of dinks. It's the 18 plus multi-boxers who are naturally dinks. It's weird, because it's like, if you got that many alts and more than me, you could scout more and faster than me. So why are you worried about that one fob when you got this huge list? You could just move to the next one. It's just, isn't it weird? Yeah, anyways. Scouting, by the way, since we're speaking of scouting, the best way to do it is, I've got 8 characters total, and I can split the searches so there hardly any overlap between all 8, and I can go out 12 jumps. And I do 12, it's arbitrary, because I figure 12 jumps is the comfortable range I'd be willing to travel back to my staging area, because you got to go back home eventually, right? And plus, you got to bring your loot home, right? So to me, 12 is anything more than that. It'd be like total chore getting back home, and I don't want to do it because I'm a homebody and I kind of like my staging area. I'm not nomadic. And the way I did it was first of all, I've got dot land up, right? And I go into mission agents and I go agent locator, agent finder, any type, and I go within 10 jumps. And I go, okay, what's the furthest I've ever been? And then you go, okay, well, and what if I go security? How far can I go out? And you just go through the list and go, have I ever high sec? I go, have I ever been to Cootie? Do I know where's that? Okay, no. All right, so that's 14 jumps that way, and that's okay that way. And you look at the list, open up the managed route, and you go, okay, yeah, all right. And you figure out which directions will take you into different parts of the universe in different directions that aren't overlapping a lot. In fact, I've got it to the point where they're not overlapping at all, except what when I first start out, right? So that's what you do, and you go on a dot land, and then you double check. You go, okay, did I miss something? Have I overlapping? And you check dot land and figure it out and get to know your area, and eventually it'll take you months to get every system in. You go, oh crap, I forgot that system, or that system's within 12 jumps and I didn't know it. And you kind of learn the area slowly, and you build up your list. I feel safe showing you one of them. So yeah, this is one of them, and I've listed it how far it is from my staging area, and then I go, okay, are there any overlaps along that route with anybody else? Maybe once or twice, especially in the beginning. But yeah, it's like, okay, great. And you slowly add to that list as you optimize it and, blah, blah, blah. But it's pretty good. And therefore, you can add them all to waypoints and then get a really fast ship. I use a Firetail with hyperspatial rigs, and it's really fast. And you whip between systems, zooming in your ship so you can tell, when you're cloaked, when you jump in a new system, and you just go to the next one and go to the next one. You just go through all your guys, scout the entire place, and I can do that amount with 8 characters, 12 jumps in 45 minutes. That includes autopiloting back to staging area. And then I set it up by, I'll show you a picture I made of the latest map. This one right here. And I had 13. You never hit optimize when you have more than 12. 12 is pushing it. It'll freeze my computer for a couple of minutes. 11 pushes it, but does it pretty quick. Never do more than that. If you do more than that, just tag it on and just drag that last. Be careful because it's kind of twitchy, but drag it until, like, to each zone very carefully so you don't drag the wrong one, and see which slot it can fit into. That'll give you the least jumps. And there you go. You've just added it. Did the hauler just spawn and just before I killed it? That's hilarious. Yeah, that was a cruiser spawn. So, alright. And done. And whoops, I forgot to pre-align. And I like to have my drones in the same area as my wrecks, so there where my hauler can go, oh, I forgot to pull in my drones. There you go. And the spawnage is really good so far. only because, remember, I'm doing this during the Capsuleer event for 20 years, and it's a 75% drop rate. So don't get too excited about the drop rate. It's less than this for sure. Like, this is really good spawn rate. It is just ridiculous amount of loot god mileage. So I'm getting a lot for my Alliance Scoffers. I'm donating it all. Let them deal with it. But it's like, yeah, yesterday he got $1 billion worth of loot. So I'm pretty sure he can deal with the red tape involved in reprocessing and selling the minerals. The minerals you get from that is all the basic types. So if you ever want to build anything, it's perfect. You don't have to go to Leshak. Just run a few FOBs and you've got enough minerals to last a while. So yeah, that's it. The neutralizer range is 165. The web range and sensor damp are less, I think about 150 or something. Something like less than, but it's the neutralizers that's scary, so to be careful. Sometimes I get bored and I have my hauler with combat probes, and I'll launch the combat probes, and because the hauler, if it shows up at your FOB early, you've got enough time to probe its safe spot down, because the response fleet spawned at the FOB and is now being distracted. You can go to that safe spot you just scanned out for the hauler, and it's that, you know, yeah, practice your combat probing. It's kind of cool. And find it, warp through it with some support staff that aren't involved in shooting the FOB. Kill the hauler, you might get a Blood Raider skin box, maybe if you're lucky. And most times you'll just get a metal scrap. Yay! Sometimes the haulers will drop modules. You can actually ship scan these suckers, and it'll show you what it's gonna 100% drop. It's kind of interesting. You can do that if you want. You can also, if you're worried about the hauler and you're worried about the spawn, you can always send a fast frigate off, find the miners. As soon as you see the miners, get into fast orbit around one of the asteroids at about 300 kilometers or such. And the response fleet will chase you around the field, and you won't have anything to worry about. Just remember to warp back your fast frigate just before the FOB dies, so you can get 30 million, or between whatever number it is, but maximum 30 million. It's free money, right? So yeah, that's the best way of doing FOBs, and I hope this helped a lot. Just remember, if you're gonna try anything, make sure you have MJDs on, and make sure you have lots of EM and thermal resistance, because if you don't, you will die. You might get lucky, but as soon as those cruisers show up, you will die. MGDs help you get away. Do be aware that the rats will starburst on top of you. Don't warp back to your safe spot. They'll follow you. And if you forget, if it's too hot and you kill the FOB, go away. Come back 15 minutes later. Bam. You don't have to worry about rats. They've all despawned. And plus, if you warp in and you see something you don't like, warp out back to your safe spot immediately before the diamond rats aggro on you. Therefore, they won't follow you. And if they don't aggro on you, they'll despawn almost immediately. So you don't have to wait 50 minutes. They'll just go bloop, they're gone. And then you just try it again. And hopefully you get battleships, because battleships are so easy. So, cakewalk. And that's especially if you're operating solo, like a rattlesnake. 100%. If you get tons of cruisers, just warp back to your safe spot. Try it again. See if you get... And be careful. If you spawn something, you warp off, and you come back, and you warp back to the FOB while the rats are still there, it'll spawn more if you're not careful. Yeah. So, scary. No advice for Garistas, I'm sorry. I have no idea. Yeah, you'll notice weird things when there's more than one FOB in system. You can get some really weird results. Like, you saw the cruisers disappear when I blew up the fob that spawned. If, say, one of the haulers magically in a multi-fob system came to the fob and it wasn't that fob's hauler, that response fleet, the stuff that's triggered by the hauler, will stick around. So yeah, it's like, and the response fleet will despawn it. Even if you've pointed them, they won't warp away, they'll just despawn. If you kill the response fleet, the hauler and miners will disappear. If you kill the haulers and miners, the response fleet won't disappear. It's kind of weird. But, as long as you're distracting them at an asteroid belt and you warp back to your guys, those rats will just they'll warp off or something. Who knows? Yeah, that's about it I can pack into this information. I'm sure I'll improve it, but I think that pretty much covers almost everything. Pro tip, as much as possible, if you're close enough, you've got the time. Like, you fit it properly with inertia stabs and all that stuff, and hyperspatial, and good implants for ascendancy and stuff. You can whip back and forth between Market Hub, dropping off your stuff, and get back before the next one is blown up. So, highly recommend that. Cheap Thrasher with a plate, great. It's perfect for taking care of crewers. Have along a frigate, ECM. The augers have 90 sensor strength. Yeah, really tough to jam. Like, I would be very hard pressed to jam 2 of them, 3 of them. Time for overheating on 2 of them and killing 1 of the augers. It's difficult. They will keep things alive you think would kill easy. If you can land your trig weapons on the vessel, you'll usually kill it despite Logi. But yeah, do be careful. Now right. Webbing. Drone bunnies. Works great. Drone bunnies work great. Also, by the way, say if this was... I'm sure you've seen lots of examples on my channel. They will... Did you notice the cruisers, if you do enough fobs, they kind of are together in a gaggle? That's only possible because they choose one to be their anchor. And if you web the anchor... I know. It's not erroneous to figure that out. I can't take credit for that genius. But in hindsight, it should have been a duh moment, but I didn't know. So yeah, you web that anchor, and they all kind of orbit around that slowed down anchor, and they go slower. And you can field bigger drones to take them out slower, like the Hammerheads. The augers are vulnerable to... Let's bring it up. The bestowers are thermal. These are response fleet stuff. Auger is EM, vulnerable. The Ashmu is thermal, I think. The Arbitrator is thermal, I think, as well. The Omens are thermal too, I believe. No, EM. You'll correct me, of course. You're looking as I go through. So, and these are different. This is the only one with kinetic vulnerability. Apox, I think, thermal weakness. Nope, thermal weakness there. It's the armor. Yeah, the armor's the key. So thermal for the battleships. Crewers are explosive, actually. Omens are EM, there you go. Arbitrators are thermal. Ashmus are thermal. Augers are barely EM. They're tough nuts to crack. Oh, right, of course. Sorry. The range of the FOBs neutralizers, whoops, errata, is 262 kilometers, not 165. The sensor damp is 186. And probably the web. Yeah, the web. And yeah, you can pause that and read that. The range which you can detect FOBs increases as time goes by. It's nothing about light years. It's nothing about anything. It's just time. And if you catch a FOB within the first 6 hours, it doesn't spawn a mining fleet. And apparently, a friend of mine yesterday said, "Don't you notice that FOBs won't spawn mining fleets for the first 2 hours after downtime because the mining barges haven't mined enough for the hauler to spawn to appear?" It seemed logical, and from what we noticed after downtime for 2 hours, we didn't really see a hauler appear. So that was odd. We did a whole bunch, so he could be right. So yeah. Don't bother shooting the battleships, the ones for the defense fleet. They don't have any bounty. I know, it's stupid. But the close support battleships, apparently, according to rumor, do have quite a lot of bounty on them. So, nom nom nom. But yeah. And yeah, Jesus Christ. That's pretty damn comprehensible. Comprehensive. Comprehensive. So there you go. By the way, if you try to get close to these guys, the best way to do it when you got MJDs is, of course, pick one, approach it, have somebody whip out there with a fast frigate and point them, because if you... I'll show you what happens. If you try to get close to them, they will starburst away and just come back at 100 from you. So I'll give you an up. The nice thing is, when you MJD, your target lock won't drop, and your drones won't lose connection. It's kind of cool. So yeah, you can get ready to attack it, and when you land, well, assuming it's pointed. Did I hit F8, F8, F8? It looks better in high graphics, but, you know, potato computer. Right, and then I just approach and start firing, but they're gonna warp away. Yeah, they warp away, they starburst away to 400. And notice how I dropped a couple of, because if you jump during that end of cycle, you'll lose our stuff. Now that guy, they should, why aren't they warping? Weird. Are they shooting at something else? Why aren't they warping away? No, that's impossible. And it'll rep really hard, actually. None of these ships have local rep. They're all remote rep. So if you kill the Augur, then they're all dead. But I have no idea why this is not like... Why aren't they starbursting away and back to 100? Is it because I killed the FOB? That would be funny. Oh yeah, by the way, if you're shooting rats, always a really smart idea to keep your Logi on a second row. That way it's ease of shooting, and you don't actually shoot yourself too. So, lol. I can't believe these guys aren't, like, getting the hell out of Dodge. That is so bizarre. Wild. Anyways, whatever. You learn something new every day, right? So yeah, MDDs are great. Pew pew. Yeah, one Auger won't be able to defeat the firepower of 3 Leshaks. I should have shot it first, but whatever. Just show you what's possible. And once everything's dead, the Augers usually tend to just go doggo. I mean, not doggo, but just like a dodo. Sit there like a dodo, like the yeah, the miners and hauler won't leave that safe spot, and they won't move. They'll just sit there dumb and let you kill them like dodos. It's pretty funny. And it's gonna take off, and I think it'll go to. I think it's slowing down now. Yeah, nothing to rep. It just sits there, and you kill it. Anyways, might as well. Kill it. The ammo I typically use is the Baryon. It's got the best range. The cruisers like to orbit at 35 kilometers, and as long as you kill all the arbitrators, like kill the arbitrators first. By the time you kill the FOB, the arbitrators have traveled from like 200 kilometers down to like 20 kilometers, so you can kill them. So kill those first, and then you can shoot the omens with your Baryon. There you go. Class dismissed. Have a good one, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. And I'm sure there's tons of stuff I'm forgetting. It's just, there's so much to learn about this stuff. It's just crazy. But yeah, don't try to overdo it. Go in with what you can do. Have your MG ready and be prepared to use the MJD calmly and warp off. It's like Marky Mark says in Shooter. Slow is, what is it? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast.